Well, hey, welcome back to Sermon Cuts. Thanks for watching. This podcast is basically where we take what we preached on this Sunday, whether it was Luke preaching or me. This week it was me preaching, and we kind of look at it from maybe a different angle, or we go more in depth on something, or we unpack something. I've said before, it's kind of like the director's cut, right? Or behind the scenes sort of look, or maybe things that we didn't get enough time um, to look at on Sunday. So Acts 5, actually the end of Acts 4 and the beginning of Acts 5 is where we were, and so we'll jump into that. But before we do, question I got for this week is this. It's we're beginning of November when we're recording this. We're getting closer to Thanksgiving,
Mm.
and so the question becomes Christmas music.
Mm.
Is it acceptable for me to start listening to Christmas music now?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say no.
Oh.
It's just too early. I mean, I understand the arguments, like, oh, we only get like 1 month for Christmas, whatever. You only get like 2 weeks for 4th of July. You only get like, maybe a couple days for Easter. It's like you need a whole month for Christmas. I disagree. I don't think you do. I think that you can fill as much music as you want in those, I don't know, that 4 weeks. Maybe you can go into a little bit of New Year's Eve and that kind of spot, there. But no, for me, it's all, you know, what I listen to year round. And then, post Thanksgiving, I still listen to those things, but I'm okay with hearing the music pop up. Um, what's the Mariah Carey?
I was thinking
She
that,
kind of,
yeah.
as soon as you start hearing that song, it's like, okay, Christmas is here. We're rolling.
Yeah.
So,
See, I'm okay. So I'm a maybe I'm a fence sitter
mm,
on this one because I think certain Christmas music
mm,
is okay. Um, there's also certain Christmas music. Reliant K did a Christmas album.
okay,
It's good all year long.
okay.
Listen to it all year long. Mariah Carey,
Not all year
not all year
Not at
long.
all.
After I don't want to hear that until after
Have
Thanksgiving,
you seen
right?
those Instagram reels where it's like they're prepping, they're putting out Halloween decorations, and they open the front door and they just hear on the wind the Mariah Carey song,
No,
and
I
they're like,
haven't.
"She's unthawing," like she's preparing.
That's that's
Or
that's
she's
amazing.
not unthawing, she's
We
thawing. Yeah.
couple of years ago for Trunk or Treat, we uh, I had a trunk and I did it Christmas themed,
Mm.
and I caught a lot of flack for it. I mean, we had like fake wrapped presents and a Christmas tree, and everybody was thoroughly confused. Like, this is Trunk or Treat Halloween, and it's Christmas themed, and anyway, so I threw people off, right? So
Mm.
um, I guess I'm a fence sitter. I would say some is acceptable, some is not. So comment, let us know. What do you think? Start to listen to Christmas music now already? Got it on your playlist, or are you absolutely not? Christmas trees. That's another thing. But we're gonna save that
It's
for another day.
a
We're
whole
gonna
other
talk about
play. Yeah,
that.
yeah,
We're gonna talk about that later. Acts 4 and 5, I think, is where we need to go. So
yeah.
so Sunday, my sermon Acts started in Acts 4. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
32, and I went through 5:11, and it was kind of interesting. I It dawned on me that morning that we had we had baby dedication
Mm-hmm.
that Sunday, and so we had some families, and we had eight or so kids up there, young children, and because of that, we had a lot of family members that were there, right, that don't usually attend and everything like that. And it dawned on me that morning the passage that I was preaching, which is essentially this passage where two people show up to a church, or not a church, they show up to the temple, but I when I was preaching it, I kind of
Mm-hmm.
played this up a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
yeah,
They show up to the temple, they worship, they give an offering, and then they die. Like, that's how they leave. And it was kind of humorous that, like, oh, this is kind of like a weird passage
yeah.
to show up, right? But the flow of it was basically this. The flow was that in at the end of 4, you see this picture. Barnabas is the example that's given, son of encouragement,
Hmm.
and it talks about him bringing this offering, right? Contributing from a pure heart, and then it contrasts that with this thing in the beginning of 5, where they come and they basically um, uh, kind of they're sneaky about it,
Mm.
right? Like, hey, here's the full offering, but it's not really all the proceeds. Like, we held back some, and I kind of talked about how, like, the point of the story isn't the money,
Yep.
right? And I think Peter even mentions that in there. He's like, you had full control of this before you sold it. You had full control of it after you
Yep.
sold it. You didn't have to bring it all,
Yep.
right? The point is not the money. The point is that you tried to deceive,
Mm.
and I think ultimately where I was going was, and where the passage goes, I think, is talking about this idea that, like, God takes serious the holiness of his church, um, and yes, the passage is odd in some ways. Yes, it's kind of startling in some ways. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But that's basically where I was going. And so I guess you could say, like, a sub point was, don't lie to God and don't lie
Yep.
to the church. But that's not the only point.
Yep.
The point
Mm.
was much deeper than that. So as you were listening, as you were kind of thinking about the story, what were some things that stood out to you?
This one's kind of humorous. I actually wrote it down on my notes. I just said, imagine being the men that were responsible for taking the body out and burying it.
Hmm.
It's like, I came to worship today, and pastor sent me out to bury a body,
Mm-hmm.
and then I get back and I'm clean myself up, be ready back to worship, and pastor sent me out to bury another body. I was just thinking
Yeah.
through that, and I was like, what an interesting turn of events for those that were gathered to worship and be together. Also, I'm sure they were tired, like just the act of digging enough to bury.
Yeah.
It was just like not the point of your passage whatsoever, but I was just like, man, that
Well, in the
sounds like an intern's job or something like that.
well, in the emotional weight of it too,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
That, like,
yeah.
very, like, I remember at the church I was at in Dallas, there was, and before I finish this story, I should quickly say, like, the man ended up being okay.
Mm.
But I preached a sermon, and then we were in worship, and a guy, like, had a heart attack during our
Mm.
service, and EMS had to be called, and it was just like, it was this very jarring
Mm.
moment. And so, I think of that, having experienced
Yeah,
that, I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
like, oh my goodness, what would this have been like if someone actually died during
Mm.
your service? And it's linked to the things that it's linked to in this passage.
Yeah, and we don't read about Ananias and Sapphira before this, and we don't read about him after this. So but it's not like, I don't think it's wrong to think that they were probably a normal part of the community. Like, the people that buried them probably knew them personally, and so it's like there's another layer to this too, of like, we knew them, we worshiped with them, we broke bread with them, and and now we're burying them. And I imagine there wouldn't I don't know that there was heartlessness in anything that was spoken here. um, Even the compassion from Peter, is he's like, it's like, you were just so close, like, you didn't have to lie, you could have just been real, been honest. Um, and he's like, and now God's going to strike you down, and we're going to move on. But I mean, just think of the loved ones, the care that we have for the people that we pastor and preach to. And um, man, I'm just glad that this was a one and done, and that we don't have to deal with that kind of thing today.
Right. Yeah.
the
And
the physical death part of it, right? Like, I understand, like, the where your heart is when you give. I can't control that. You can't control that for the people that are giving. But um, the the compassion and the realness of, these are people that we worship God with and break bread with. And yeah, so maybe
yeah,
that's a sorry, one more thing. That's probably another pointer, or another poignant piece of community that's here. That Ananias and Sapphira didn't just lie to themselves, didn't just lie to the Spirit, but they also lied to their community. And yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think you make an important point too about like a one and done thing because obviously like a wrong application of this would be like, oh no, if I do the wrong thing, God's gonna strike me
Yeah,
dead.
you get smoked.
And it's like there's certain things in scripture that are like we could specify between its descriptive and prescriptive,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I think this is based on the fact that like we don't see this sort of thing happening again in Acts, and we don't, in the rest of the New Testament we don't see this thing happening. Is kind of like this is a descriptive moment rather than prescriptive. Like, okay, like if you don't give, you know, um, deacon, shut those doors. If you don't give money rightly, then you're gonna die, right? But it does bring up a good point. So what do we do with like weird or awkward or confusing passages? How do we approach those in the Bible?
Yeah, I think that a couple things. Number one, leaning into that prescriptive versus descriptive, like trying to understand, like, is the weird thing in this text, is that descriptive of things that should be in our life, or is it just a situation like this that Ananias and Sapphira, like, the issue wasn't the money, as you said, the issue was their heart, right? So I think that's a very important key for this. Another thing is context, understanding the context of the passage that you're reading, whether it's Old Testament, New Testament, wherever it is. It was written for a specific group of people, to a specific group of people, in a specific culture. And those are not one-to-one comparisons to today. And so there's multiple things happening on multiple levels that require maybe some deeper study before we're just like, well, this is what it means for me because this is what it means for them, and that's just it's not the same thing.
So then, based on those two things, like what is the main takeaway?
Yeah, I think for this passage with Ananias and Sapphira, it's not about money. It's about posture. It's about their heart when they're giving. It's about them. Well, it's about your behavior in your community, and like really, I think community is a big. It's a buzzword for the church, but I think it's has a big impact here. That it wasn't that they just lied about the money. They lied to themselves. They lied to the Spirit. And they lied to their community. And though what occurred was a very intense, reaction to that, I think that it kind of covers like all of those bases. Like if we don't, or for God, like if it's not shown that this is a big deal because of how it affects the community, then how do we ever like get that back? How do we display, take the community seriously, take the Spirit of God that's within us seriously? Take like that's the intent here. Like it's about community and it's about your posture. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good. What other things did you think either while you're listening to the sermon or maybe after the sermon?
Yeah.
Wherever. Where else would you go with this?
I think kind of leaning into that more is kind of check yourself before you wreck yourself kind of stuff, right? Like your motivation needs to be pure for the things that you do. I think you talked about it in service about what's one of the reasons that people don't like the Western church. It's because, I don't want to deal with them. They're too fill in the blank, righteous, centered, whatever it is. And I think, like there is a big issue with self-righteousness and doing things because of the acclaim that I can get for them, not for the service and generosity that it provides for the church. So.
Yeah, which Jesus himself would push back on that, right? And
absolutely.
he'd say, Sermon on the Mount. He talks about when you give, don't make a spectacle of it. Don't do it so that you may be seen by others. Because when you are
Yeah.
seen by them, then you get, that's your reward.
Yeah.
You were seen by them. You have no reward other than that. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites, stand on the street corner. Instead, go into the closet and pray. His point not being there that it's bad to publicly pray or have people know that you give, but it's what is your motivation for doing that, right?
Yeah.
Is it wrong for us to recognize when people do good?
I don't think so. I honestly think it's better, or it's okay for me to recognize you doing something great. It's different if it's me recognizing me doing something great. My brother likes to joke sometimes. He says, "My favorite thing about you is how humble you are." But he's completely joking and being sarcastic. Or he'd say, "My favorite thing about me is how humble I am," or something like that. The
Yeah,
joke being like
yeah.
self-recognized generosity isn't generosity, it's just self-righteousness and pride.
Yeah.
But if you go out and serve, I'm like, man, you just did a great job. Like, this is a good thing, and I think that's good. Like that's helpful.
I just don't get to say, man, I just served.
Yeah.
I did a great
Yeah,
job.
yeah,
right?
absolutely,
I
yeah.
don't get to write a book, Humility and How I Achieved.
Yeah, right. No, not at all. Yeah.
How I achieved humility in 5 easy steps. I think it goes back to posture, right? Like what's the posture of your heart, and where are you? What are you focused on? It's interesting. We talk about revival in the church, and that word gets thrown around a lot. And my standard answer has been like, I don't know, maybe our culture is experiencing revival. We'll know in a couple of years, because it's hard to say in the moment. But some of the things that we call revival, I wonder if that ought to just be like, that's just how the church operates. Like it's kind of almost when you haven't for a long time seen certain things and then you see them, they seem amazing and miraculous, when in reality, like, that's just what the church does, right? So what if we had a culture where, and I think this is what we would strive for, where things happen and that we sometimes look at and we go like, oh man, that's so amazing. What if they were things that, like, yeah, we just expect that. Like that's just what the church does.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because that's what the Spirit does inside us.
I like that.
And
Yeah,
how
that's a good.
how he guides and directs us. So what other things? What other things did you?
Yeah, I think the you kind of have a 3-point takeaway a little bit. Maybe I just wrote down 3, but the being honest with God, being honest with your community, and then preserving the integrity of your community. I think those 3 things are the heartbeat of this passage, and they need to be our heartbeat as a church, that we, and as individuals, both and, like as we ourselves are either giving or serving or whatever it is, that we are honest with God. He knows our heart. He knows the truth. That doesn't mean that we just expect him to like take the truth out of us and we never tell him, right? Like repentance is the same way. Like he knows my sin, but he still wants me to tell him my sin, right? Because it's a conscious thing. It's a decision at that point. Honesty with him is the same way. And I think being honest with your community is just as important, because not that it's transactional, as in like, well, if I'm honest, then later they can help me out. It's like, no, I'm honest, and because I'm honest, it gives them the opportunity to help me out later. There's actually a conversation Sunday evening about just this thing. We had that the prayer after service that I'm not going to go into details on, led to some sad reactions and people just needing to process, struggling with, well, I'd rather just go escape and be by myself than lean into the community that I have. And I was like, well, not to be the guy pointing at the pastor's sermon, but did you hear the sermon this morning? Like, Adam gave us, the encouragement that we get to lean into our community. And those around us don't support us because they have to, but because generosity is a heartbeat of the church, and they get to. And and also in good times, right? But you definitely see it more in the hard times. When we face the sin and the brokenness, being a part of a community that knows us lifts us up later on. And that takes honesty, and that takes integrity, which is here in this passage. So,
yeah, and I think taking seriously community is the church. Not just community. I know that sometimes becomes a buzzword, community, right? But like specifically, like the community within the church is something that is I think vital for us to understand from this passage. I think one of the things that's interesting is just all these links to you are now the temple of God. The people of God no longer go to the temple. We are the temple, and the Holy Spirit lives inside us. And so you think about how seriously they took the temple. Well, how seriously we take the community because the Spirit lives inside us.
I think that preserving the holiness of the temple has always been God's go-to. And this action here in Acts 5 shows it even more. Like, it's not something to take lightly. It is a very serious thing. I just made that connection. Just like preservation of holiness is something that God has always cared about. And it was very rigid in the Old Testament. And I think it's still rigid. It's just applied a little differently today, Thank you for that insight, Lord. Appreciate that one.
Good thought, for sure. Anything else that you would say on this passage?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that really ties everything together pretty well.
I think just a first glance at this passage, it might seem a little weird, and might seem a little harsh. But once we kind of get into it and we figure out what's really going on, we see, oh no, this actually has some really timely stuff for us, and it's super helpful for us. So yeah. So well, that's Acts 4:32 to 5:11. So this next Sunday we've got the rest of chapter 5 finishing up. Peter is preaching again. Finds himself in jail again. Right? He's a repeat offender.
He likes jail.
He is
He likes jail.
He likes jail. Yeah. Well, for the right reasons, though, right? He goes to jail for the right reasons, and so we'll be kind of looking at that a little more and seeing what that has to say for us. So,
I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, thanks for watching. Like we said before, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let us know your thoughts. Maybe you've still got some questions about this passage, and so we'd love to chat more about that. Also, I think we ought to say thanks to Matt at Heron Crow, a friend of ours, for letting us use this space today,
Barbershop.
use his barbershop. Thanks for watching.